August is the determining factor, will be the determining factor and the determining day, so to speak. But we are here as KBC Channel 1 to give you wall-to-wall coverage of what will be happening in this particular elections. We have our reporters stationed across the country, talk about all the 290 constituencies as well as various wards therein, and not forgetting the National Tallying Center that is at the Bomas of Kenya. So this is a place to be for all your matters elections. And Troy, just before we dive into what we have for our viewers today, I mean, today, just as we had yesterday being the last day of campaigns and all meetings as is in our constitution, we have seen a good number of these leaders heading over to church. Should we say a date with the Maker after campaigns?
Indeed, today was, they were seeking divine intervention. We had Agano party leader also had his day at the church. We also had, that is Wahiga Mwaure, we also had the DP Ruto in Eastlands. We had Azimio at the KICC trying to seek divine intervention. And that is not only the thing that we can say in matters polls has happened today. We have also witnessed in some of the articles that we've run in our news is that people have started traveling to ensure that they are at the polling station so that they make their constitutional and democratic mandate as enshrined in the constitution. But to try and put things into perspective, it's a good thing that you have mentioned that the campaigns are over, and AEBC did something better today. They had a simulation exercise of which we are going to be talking about. But let me first of all bring in our panel of experts here. They are leadership and governance expert. Allow me to first of all introduce Professor Munene Macharia. Karibu sana, Prof.
Asante sana.
And just next to Prof, we have Advice Mudalo. Karibu sana, Prof.
Thank you so much.
Now, gentlemen, today was a divine seeking day. We've seen people have started traveling. Although when we look at other elections, people were really traveling. Perhaps it's the high cost of living, and perhaps it's, well, things are not quite as they were in the year 2017. Prof?
Well, it's true that the cost of living has gone up. People do not have as much money as they had at that time. And also that has to be taken into account. But it is good that those who took their votes outside Nairobi have made the effort to go and be present on Tuesday so that they can vote for the candidate of their choice, whoever that is. So it is very good that people are making that effort. It would be tragic if they did not go and vote for whatever reason. So it's good they are going.
Yes, and allow me to apologize because Kenyans have just won a bronze medal in the ongoing Commonwealth Games. They're just wrapping it up. We still have the 4x400 relay final. That's the women. The men's, Wiseman Were, Boniface Mweresa, William Mutunga, and Emmanuel Correa have emerged. At least they have won a bronze medal in that short race that has just concluded, and we will be crossing over to the Commonwealth Games for some minutes when we have the last race. That is Winnie Chebet, Veronica Mutua, Jacinta Mawia, and Mary Mora will be seeking a medal in the women 4x400 meter relay. Advice?
Yes.
Your take?
First of all, I thank you for having me at the KBC studios. It had been a while.
Karibu.
Now, on to what you've actually commented about the Kenyans and the what you would call laxity to actually travel and vote. I think it's a bit different from my opinion. I have been to some of these bus stages and I've seen actually there is quite an influx. I think maybe the coverage is what is not as wide. So there is quite some traveling. Yes, it might not be to the extent of the 2017 election, but it's true that Kenyans are actually coming out, and we are also encouraging as many Kenyans as possible to get out, travel to wherever the vote is, because it, despite the fact that we have issues with the cost of living, but these are decisions that we take for the country, and then we have to live with that decision for 5 years. So it has quite more importance than what we could just maybe peg it on maybe just the cost of living. It's just a sacrifice we have to do for the country, and the cost of living is one of the reasons why then the Kenyans have to travel, vote, because then that is how we correct any ills that we think exist in the country.
Indeed. And Prof, in 2013 we had, in the presidential race, we had about over 100,000 spoiled votes. But in 2017 we saw the numbers increase of the spoiled vote. IEBC today did have a simulation exercise, of which some people say that they should have done this a little bit earlier, not on when we were about 20-something hours to the polls. Those numbers are quite startling in the presidential race. Almost 500,000 spoiled votes in the 2017 general election.
Yeah, I think they should have done this much earlier than today. But it's also an effort. I think the media have an obligation to tell people what the situation is. One of the things I've heard said is that each voter should make sure that that ballot paper is stamped at the back. Because sometimes the clerk might forget to stamp or whatever reason. So, and if they do not stamp it, so it said it might become a spoiled vote. So it could be some inadvertent mistake. So people should ensure that their ballot papers are stamped at the back so that they do not then become spoiled or say something is missing. So it's a technical thing. So the IBC should have done this much earlier and should have mounted a bigger campaign in order to let people know what the procedure, what is expected, and all that sort of thing. But it's good they're trying now. Yes.
Advice?
I think, first of all, in respect of the growth in numbers, in terms of the number of voters in the register, it will also just be obvious that we will have more number, even in the number of the spoiled votes, pegging on your comparison between 2013 and 2017, because there was a significant increase in the number of voters in the register. But be that as it may, the biggest problem, in my view, with this election is that the sensitization bit of the IEBC has not been done to the extent that it needs to be done. We have not seen IEBC get out to really ensure that the Kenyans have the exactness of what they need to do. Because the issues like stamping of the ballot paper are issues that are coming in last minute, and they are coming in more like gutter press, more like there is no very official communication. When we expect that the IEBC, and the Parliament gave the IEBC quite a budget for them to actually use during this exercise, it would only have been right that sensitization goes down into the villages, more or less in equal measure with the campaign. But then we have not seen them come out to do the sensitization as much. I know there has been quite some effort, including with the IEBC Youth Coordinating Committee, which is the first of its kind in this election. But I don't think it has been done to the extent that the Kenyan would really wish it was done. I tend to think most of sensitization work was not done effectively, and that's why issues like stamping, more or less, those are issues maybe we know here in Nairobi. I'm not so sure that people in villages like Magemo, somewhere in Bungoma County, are aware that we have that kind of an issue. And so I also wish to also say that IEBC should not be able to let that be in the preserve of you, the voter. If they know, and the officials are aware that all these need to be stamped, they should be able to be on the forefront to ensuring that every ballot paper is stamped, and not taking it back to the voter and telling the voter as if then it's their responsibility to ensure that their vote is counted, but it's also the IEBC responsibility to ensure that every Kenyan who turns up, their vote makes sense. Yeah.
And Prof, it's a good thing that Advice has brought about the issue of civic education that it has been quite lacking, if you ask me. Looking at what IEBC talked about, young people are not even registering as voters. And some of the people we have interviewed, some people don't see the need to actually go and make the difference at the ballot. The civic education, IEBC had the time. And if at all they had to factor that in the budget, it's something that they should have done, so that we ensure that each and everyone know that it is a constitutional right, and you can change all this? And it's a good thing you've said that some things that are coming up now, not many Kenyans might know about it.
It's true. Many Kenyans may not know about it. And yes, the IBC has a big job, or should have had a big job with the money they got, but they've also had a lot of other problems. Until the last minute, they were still wondering whether they'll go. So they might be excused in that sense. But the civic education is not just an IBC thing. It's a national thing. The government has an obligation. The media have an obligation to let the people know in the various places that when you go voting, this is what you are expected to do. The IBC may not even be able to do those things. The other thing is that we have agents in every polling station representing various candidates. I think they also have an obligation to ensure that the ballot paper are properly taken care of. So if they see that some people are getting papers without stamp, they should raise the question, why not stamping that paper, So everyone is supposed to be involved and to do the right thing so that every ballot paper counts. And it counts the way it should be, so that we don't have too many spoiled votes. Of course, they are likely to increase because the number of voters have increased. As to the question of the youth, there's disillusionment, there's apathy. That's one of the problems in this election, that there appears to be a lot of apathy, which means that a lot of people will not turn up to vote, and that's not very good for the country. So how it can be done that you encourage people to go and vote is, with a day or so remaining, it's a tall order. But it needs to be emphasized that it's not just an obligation and a duty, it's also in the interest of the person who is supposed to vote in one or two ways. First, if you do not like a particular person, that's all the reason you should go and vote against that person by voting for someone. Because if you allow that bad person to get in because of your vote, you did not vote, then the wrong person gets in, then you voted for the wrong person. You shouldn't, that kind of thing. Of course, the other side is that you want a particular person to win, so you have to go and vote. But if you don't want anybody particular person to win, and you want somebody not to win, then you still have to go and vote. So it is a selfish position. You should look at it in that it is your interest. And if not you as a person, then your community interest. And everyone, because if things go wrong, then you have no right to complain afterwards if you refused to participate, because that is a national duty, which also brings in something else that we are missing as a country. This should not be coming at election times. It should be part of the civic education from baby school, going all the way to the universities. That you know your obligations, your rights. We hear a lot of people talking, my rights, without my obligations. So you should have...
The rights have to come with the obligations.
They go together. You cannot have rights without obligations. And the way to inculcate that kind of culture is to re-look at the education system. One of the terrible things that have happened in Kenya is that we have downgraded history. So people don't know themselves. They don't know they've lost their identity. And when people say they cannot vote, they don't feel as if they are part of this system. It's because they were ignored where it mattered, so that they grow up being Kenyans, feeling that they have these rights. But when you tell people that they should not be studying history, there's something wrong with that mentality. And then you complain afterwards that things are not going right. It's because you messed up at the beginning.
Advice. You are a young man. IEBC, when announcing that we are expecting 22.1 million Kenyans to be at the ballot just in a couple of hours. But unfortunately, the startling statistics that young people do not want to register, and even some just want to participate in the campaigns and the election process, but not actually cast the ballot.
And it boils down, unfortunately, that is a reality. But it boils down to the original problem that we talked about, the sensitization in this election. Not just in the bit of ensuring that people actually turn out to vote, but it ought to have actually started at the bit of encouraging and sensitizing people on the importance of actually registering first as voters. There was, of course, the IEBC gave a timeline. Of course, they even extended the timeline. But far from that, away from just giving the timeline and extending the timeline, there was no direct push from the IEBC to really ensure that the voter, this gentleman who has just left high school in Form 4 and he's now turning 18 years, gets to understand that the vitality of him looking for his ID is just as important as him looking for his voter's card. And some of them were even naive enough. We interact with them, being in the political space, interact with these young people. And some think having an ID is equal to actually having a voter's card. So despite the fact that I agree with Prof that government institutions must actually come in wholesomely to ensure that there is such kind of sensitization. But IEBC has a mandate to actually sensitize. They have a budget. They are a department to actually sensitize and carry out civic education. So someone would want to ask, where did the chunk of that budget actually go? Because we have not seen the extent. And that is why we are having a lot of young people today who are participating in political rallies, but unfortunately they are not voters, unfortunately. And it's even a bigger problem that, again, those who are voters are not extremely motivated to vote. It's another problem. But again, as we sit here, I do not want to really throw it into disarray, because we still have a chance. We have about 24 hours. And so I want to mostly speak from the side that is optimistic, that we encourage the young people who are registered to ensure that they have turned out to vote. Because the moment you go out to make your decision at the ballot, the people who are affected the most by leadership are the young people, because we are the ones who suffer the most when the leadership is bad. So we must actually come out and be a part and parcel, not just for the fashion of it, but for the reality that we need to make these decisions. And I agree with Prof when he talks about some of the leaders who are throwing history into disarray and feeling like it's not important. And that is one of the reasons we're having today. Because for as long as the people do not understand their past, for as long as the people do not understand where they are coming from, there will be little interest for them to actually navigate their future. So any leader who is talking about lack of importance of history, that is someone who is actually confusing the young people. That is the person who is throwing people into disarray. Because once people understand where they are coming from, they will be very interested in what happens afterwards. But if we don't understand where we are coming from, then we operate like a car without headlights.
Indeed. And Prof, looking at this election, 22.1 million Kenyans, we have had 18,000 observers, according to IEBC. And 14,000, around 16,000 aspirants, candidates. This is the biggest election yet. And we have seen the magnitude by even how international media are reporting, talking about East Africa powerhouse. How high stakes is the Kenya election?
Well, elections in Kenya are not simply Kenyan. They are regional elections held in Kenya. Because, as you say, Kenya is a regional powerhouse. It is one of the countries in the world which has a UN headquarters. And by that virtue alone, you have a lot of interest from other countries. The other places were the United States in New York and Geneva in Europe. After that, it's Nairobi.
Yeah.
So that in itself attracts a lot of attention, global attention. Because whatever happens in Nairobi affects not only Eastern and Central Africa. And you notice that all the major media houses, they have their headquarters in Nairobi, their African headquarters are in Nairobi.
Yeah.
So this is the radiating point. And if anything happens to the radiating point, the whole world is affected. So that's why they are all interested to come and see what is going on here, and to ensure that things do not go haywire, because then that's the way you protect your interests. So they are here to protect their interest, not necessarily that they care about us, although they do, but the driving force is their interest as they perceive them. So their regional interests, once you are in Nairobi, financially, in terms of communication, you can reach anywhere in Africa, practically. And that attracts a lot of attention. Now you talk about the thousands of aspirants for one position or another. It's a very good thing, because it also indicates that people are showing interest. They are becoming more involved in the democratic process. We may not be perfect, but we vote every 5 years. There are countries which don't vote. So we do well in that sense. And the more people get involved in the process, the better for the country. Of course, you are going to have minor disputes here and there, which is okay. But the more people we have vying for positions and losing and accepting, the better for the country. Because then they will not be tempted to think of some other strange things. So they should get into the political field, win or lose, and then move on to the next level.
All right. And now let's first of all cross over to Birmingham, where we're expecting our ladies to start the race 4x400 meters relay final. Winnie Chebet, Veronica Mutua, Jarinta Mawia, and Mary Mora. They are all on standby. Let's first of all cross over to Birmingham, and then we'll be back with this live discussion.
One last act of drama on a week that will long linger in the memory of everybody lucky enough to be here. It's the final of the women's 4x400 meter relay. Botswana in 2, England in 3, Kenya 4, Canada 5, South Africa 6, Nigeria 7, Jamaica 8, and Scotland on the outside in lane 9. Huge moment for the 8 women ready to start the battle.